Hello, Marcus Bronzy here from What Culture. Now, though its reputation has been majorly repaired in recent years thanks to the surge of great movies landing on video-on-demand platforms, the name straight-to-video, that label, is still sneered at by many, and given its history of crud films, well, they kind of got a good reason. Now, bonus game for you in this list if you can correctly count the number of times I use the words STV in place of straight to TV. So, did you know there's a Cruel Intentions franchise with 2 STV sequels, and Wild Things made it into 4 films deep before the gravy train ran out of steam? Now, home video can indeed be a haven for quick, cynical, lazy cash grabs, but sometimes, those movies many of us dismiss as not having the filmmaking skill or general interest to land in cinemas are actually way more worth your time than you might expect. So, from surprisingly solid sequels in the long stagnant series to righteous one-offs nobody saw coming, here are 12 surprisingly awesome straight-to-video movies. Ha ha ha! We're about to jump into that bargain bin bliss. Number 12, Wrong Turn 2. Dead End. Why should it have sucked? Well, 2003's cannibal horror flick Wrong Turn came and went without much fuss, and when a straight-to-video sequel was released 4 years later with none of the original surviving characters returning, and first-time director Joe Lynch helming, it was tough to expect anything more than a forgettable reprise of what came before. Why is it awesome? Well, Wrong Turn 2 is oddly enough a far more entertaining film than the original, despite costing less than 1/3 of the original's price tag. Now, the key here is tone. Dead End doesn't even begin to be a serious horror flick, and instead focuses on self-aware humour, relentless gore, and Henry Rollins' memorable performance as the former Marine turned reality TV show host. Whoever wrote that, I'll give it to you. It's unique. Now, it's not perfect by any means, but it's a major step up from the forgettable original. Plus, it's got a mutant cannibal baby feeding on a severed finger. What more could you possibly want? Number 11, Unthinkable. Why should it have sucked? Well, it's hard to get too hyped about this movie from the wildly inconsistent Gregor Jordan, well, the man responsible for Ned Kelly and The Informer, especially as it went STV, but you know what that stands for by now, kids, during the period of Samuel L. Jackson's career where he starred in clunkers like Jumper and The Spirit. Plus, how many political thrillers that don't even get theatrical releases are actually good? Why is it awesome? Well, Unthinkable is propelled forward by Samuel L. Jackson's savagely entertaining performance as an interrogator forced to go to the most desperate lengths to get the location of 3 dirty bombs out of a terrorist, Michael Sheen. Now, the movie is legitimately discomforting as it forces the viewer to consider whether torture can be permissible under certain circumstances, with Jackson, Sheen, and Carrie-Anne Moss making the best of a tight, pointed script, while Jordan milks the drama for, well, maximum intensity. Number 10, Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning. Why it should have sucked? Well, because there's a good chance you forgot there were 2 sequels prior to this, and how many third sequels are even remotely decent, especially in the action genre? Why is it awesome? Well, Day of Reckoning opens with an unforgettable sequence in which the protagonist, John, played by Scott Adkins, wife and son are brutally slaughtered by Luke Devereaux, Jean-Claude Van Damme, goddammit, and that's just the beginning of the righteous, gorgeously shot 114-minute orgy of violence. Whilst it's a little disappointing that the franchise actually stars Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, they don't really appear that much throughout. We've seen that trick in straight-to-video before. So the STV legend Adkins is more than suitable when it comes to a replacement for somebody who can handle some fisticuffs, and he definitely carries the film. In addition to the superb violence, it's also got a surprising psychological undercurrent that's more effective than you'd expect. It might be clearing an incredibly low bar, but the 4th time, hey, it really is the charm here. Day of Reckoning is one of the best films in that franchise. Number 9, Stretch. Why it should have sucked? Well, let's be honest, it's never a good sign when a film is pulled 3 months before the release and the producers have to dump it on video on demand because they couldn't interest any other studios, especially when it's being directed by the hit and miss Doe Carnahan. He's behind Narc and Smoking Aces and The A-Team. So why is it awesome? Well, Universal really screwed up by not giving this one a chance. Yeah, it's rough around the edges, sure, but this is a madcap tale of a limo driver played by Patrick Wilson who has one night to pay back a sizable gambling debt and it's a total blast. It's relentless, the energetic thrill ride with cameos from David Hasselhoff, Ray Liotta, and it never really sits still in one place for too long. I mean, the scattershot vibe of it is crazy, but ultimately highly entertaining. Stretch has already become something of a cult classic. Number 8, Ninja, Shadow of a Tear. Shadow of a Tear, I feel like Shadow of a Tear is a great album name. Anyway, why should it have sucked? It's a sequel to the intermittently fun but really quite bland 2009 STV martial arts movie Ninja that pretty much nobody saw. Why would anyone expect a sequel to be genuinely good? Well, why is it awesome? A definite improvement over the original film in almost every single way. Ninja 2 is a loving tribute to martial arts trash, free from any wink nudge irony, but instead totally reveling in the 1990s VHS feel and tone, while Adkins delivers one of his most brilliantly explosive fighting displays to date. How this man hasn't broken through to the mainstream despite his immense combat skill and handsomeness, well, it's just insane. You'll need a certain tolerance for cornball plots and characters to make it through some rough lines, but if you're a fan of this genre, this is a damn sight more entertaining than it has any right to be. Bravo! Number 7, Tremors 2, Aftershocks. Why should this have sucked? Well, some 6 years after the original 1990s monster flick bombed at the box office, however, it did tear it up on home video, a Kevin Baconless sequel was finally released STV style with around 1/3 of the original's budgets. Yikes. Why is it awesome? Well, on paper, there's no way it should have succeeded, but Tremors 2 is proof of what results with a passionate crew who can come up with what they need to on that shoestring budget, and it's stretched to an absolute breaking point on this. Somehow, the Graboids are still fairly convincing, or as convincing as they need to be anyway, and while the film is absolutely inferior to the original, it still retains the same sense of charm. Particular credit goes to Fred Ward and Michael Gross for their performances here, the latter of whose, Burt Gummer, would become the protagonist of 3 Tremor sequels that followed. Yep, you heard me right, it was so nice they had to do it thrice. More times than the 2 times they did it, that is. Number 6, Trick or Treat. Why should this have sucked? Well, when even a horror movie struggles to secure a theatrical release despite starring Brian Cox and Dylan Baker, something has to be wrong, right? With all the STV horror sludge that ends up in bargaining bins all around Halloween, why would we bother with this one? Well, I'll tell you why, because it's awesome. Michael Dougherty's directorial debut is an immensely entertaining horror anthology with an uncharacteristically consistent collection of 4 shorts that make the most of a strong cast and impressive production values. At once tremendously creepy and a hell of a lot of fun, Trick or Treat quickly became a cult classic once it hit DVD and has been a popular Halloween staple ever since. There's even a sequel in the works too. Yeah, that's right. It's so nice, they're gonna do it. I already did that. Number 5, Get the Gringo. Why it should have sucked. Now, when an actor of Mel Gibson's caliber can't get a movie in cinemas, it must be because of one of 2 things. 1, somebody leaked a tape of him saying some disgustingly racist shit. Oh wait, they did. Or it must really stink, especially with a first-time director at the helm. Why it's awesome? Now, why in the real world Gibson's a bit of an arse? He's about 95% of the reason this movie works, acting as a co-writer and producer in addition to star. He proves here that he's not missed a step despite his extracurricular foolishness and can still play the wise-talking badass. The plot is fairly throwaway, but the unique Mexican prison setting combined with an agreeably old-school tone and Gibson's gonzo performance makes it outrageously enjoyable, and it's a venture sure to credit the STV label. Number 4. Wolf Creek 2. Why should it have sucked? Well, it's a horror sequel with little reason to exist that arrived 8 years after the first movie tore up the box office but also divided critics. Alright. Why is it awesome? Well, would you believe that Wolf Creek 2 actually screened at the Venice Film Festival? Not only that, but it's a savagely violent but gorgeously filmed and occasionally hilarious horror flick. Much of the credit here goes to the writer-director Greg McLean, who has grown substantially as a filmmaker since the original and wrings every morsel out of a premise that basically is just a rehash of the original, but they did it better. However, it's the central psychopath Mick Taylor played with demented vigour by John Jarratt who steals the show at every turn, enough that you may genuinely hope that there's a Wolf Creek 3 in another 8 years, or maybe earlier. Number 3, The Man from Earth, why it should have sucked. You know what does well in the STV world? Martial arts, explosions, bad dialogue, loud noises. Do you know what doesn't do well in the STV world? Dialogue dense, single location dramas with no vibe and no action. Well, there's a special place in the bargain basement in hell for films like this, especially ones from the director of not only Lusty Liaisons, but also Lusty Liaisons 2. I'll let you get your Google on for that. Why is it awesome? Well, had it been released 5 years later, there's a good chance The Man from Earth would have been a VOD hit. And we think it was definitely boosted by the amount of thanks and strong word of mouth recommendations that it got. Well, it got so many recommendations that a sequel is currently in development. In this case, it's a simple case of the audience wins. The film revolves around a professor, David Lee Smith, who explains to his intellectual friends that he's in fact an early form of human and has been living for over 1400 years, all while his pals attempt to disprove his various claims. It might not amount to much more than a debate, but the smart, fascinating dialogue easily papers over the low budget to make this an uncommonly thoughtful meditation on existence and humanity's potential. Don't feel bad if you've never heard of it though. To be honest, before this list, I didn't either. Number 2, Undisputed 2, Last Man Standing. Why did it suck? Now, 4 years after 2002's Ving Rhames and Wesley Snipes starring boxing flick bombed with critics and audiences, an STV sequel hit the stores with half of the budget, neither of the original stars, and a guy best known at the time for directing Power Rangers episodes. A disaster in the making then? Well, this film is awesome. Why? World-renowned martial artists Michael Jai White and Scott Adkins do the terrific job of filling the void left by Rhames and Snipes. Now, with an unexpectedly super sequel that serves up an exceptionally shot and choreographed set of fight scenes and terrifically charismatic protagonists in White. The film substantially boosted the careers of Adkins and director Isaac Florentine, who have collaborated frequently since, including some of the aforementioned Ninja series. A third Undisputed film starring Adkins was released in 2010, and he also returns for a fourth film due for release early next year. Number 1, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Why should this have sucked? Despite premiering at the Sundance Festival, this horror comedy from the first time director Eli Craig kind of struggled to secure a proper theatrical release, and so it was dumped on VOD over 18 months later after its first screening, which doesn't really invite stellar expectations, does it? Why is it awesome? Well, Tucker and Dale is the perfect example of a movie you avoided upon release, but once it arrived on your streaming platform, you decided, hey, let's throw it on a lazy Sunday afternoon, and then you discovered, lo and behold, it was actually pretty damn good. With outrageous gore and a clever premise that giddily mocks horror tropes, this is a startlingly original film. It knows exactly what it is and it delivers accordingly. The film was so successful on home video that there's even talk of a sequel on the way. So there you go, 12 surprisingly awesome straight-to-video movies. Which STV movies most surprised you with their impressive quality? What did we miss out? Let us know in the comments, alongside your answer to that STV challenge I mentioned at the start. Anyway, for more awesome What Culture content, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and also give us a follow on Twitter at What Culture. I'm also on social medias as well, at Marcus Bronzy, MarcusBronzy. I'll see you next time. Peace.